Zach Gelb, CBS Sports Radio, good friend of mine. We go back to the Temple days, which ties perfectly into what we're going to be discussing today. And Zach, it's official. Fran Brown, head coach at Syracuse. Your immediate reaction?
I think it's a good hire for Syracuse. Now, I don't know if it's going to work out, but I think this is a hire that Syracuse needs to make. Someone that is just an absolute dog on the recruiting trail, has those Northeast ties, which Fran Brown clearly has, and he's a player development type of coach as well, because you got to bring in a new culture that has to be infused with player development in this era of NIL and the transfer portal, and Syracuse is not this top football program. So I think bringing in a guy like Fran Brown hopefully can bring a bunch of 2-3-star guys in that could get this team consistently in bowl eligibility. And then maybe a year or two, they could pop off and take it further than what people thought.
What do you think makes him stand out? Is it the relationship with the players? I would say obviously it is the recruiting, but outside of that, do you think this is someone that can become a head coach, or do you think there's going to be growing pains?
I think naturally, whenever you go from one job to the next, you've never been a head coach before, there's things that you learn about yourself. But I think Fran is ready to get that opportunity, and clearly he's now got that with Syracuse. I thought he was going to get maybe the Temple job 2 years ago, and he winds up now getting a better job in Syracuse. So it's a credit to his work ethic. But ultimately, when I think of Fran Brown, it's recruiting and it's player development. Like, we both know Hassan Reddick. Hassan Reddick is where he is today in a large part because of the job that Fran Brown did at Temple with him, getting him back on the football team, elevating him from a walk-on to eventually one of the more dominant defensive players in the country. And when you talk to Fran, he just has this infectious personality. He's just someone that talks to you like an actual human being, and it's not a robot that is just marinated in coaches speak. He's a genuine human being, and he has the passion, he has the recruiting skills, and he has the development which you would want in a head coach.
Do you see him as leading the defense? Do you see him as someone coming in and he's kind of the overseer, the DC gets the big role, the OC gets the big role, or do you see him getting his hands in a little bit thicker than what he has at his past schools?
I think he is going to have his hands involved in every side of the team because he's going to want everyone to embody who Fran Brown is. But I also think he's smart enough to realize that delegation is important. Like, I think honestly, and maybe he'll call the defense, but I would hire a very strong defensive coordinator that he trusts and he shares a vision with. And then you got to bring in a rock star, young, up-and-coming offensive mind, because you don't want a coach that is only going to focus on the defensive side of the ball and have no clue what the offense looks like. And then it's Syracuse holding teams to 14, 17 points a game, but then they're losing these games because they can't score anything on the offensive side of the ball.
And what's your impression of him as a person? I know you and me kind of crossed paths with him in our college days. He seems soft-spoken, but also gives me the vibe of someone that probably can raise that energy level in practice. What did you remember from your time with WHIP?
He has an incredible amount of swag. Like, Fran Brown just has great energy. And I remember a conversation that I had with him, and it shows how much he cares about the players. When Matt went to Baylor, he had a tough decision. Do I stay at Temple or do I go to Baylor? And he told me after it was announced that he left, it said it was the toughest decision he's ever had to make. And he cried so much that night when he said, I'm leaving. And the only other time he cried more in his life was when his mother, unfortunately, passed away. And I'll never forget that conversation. He said, I'm going to be a head coach one day. I want to be the head coach at Temple. And unfortunately, he didn't get the job at Temple, but now he gets that opportunity at Syracuse. But what I take from that is look how much of a crossroad it was, where it's obviously that the job at Baylor was better than Temple, but because of how much he cares about the players and the relationships that he formed, it was so tough for him to leave.
And lastly, what do you think the fans are getting in this guy? How do you think his impression and just what he's going to come across as to this upstate New York community?
I think he's going to immerse himself into the community, but more importantly, this is the type of hire where it's not the biggest name, it's not the flashiest hire, but those hires necessarily always don't pan out and work. This is a hire that fits where Syracuse is at right now. Like if Fran Brown, and it may take 2 ugly years and they may get going in the 3rd year, but if he could get this team back to consistently making bowl games and then just capitalize off one of those years and maybe you go win 9 or 10 games, I think everyone would be doing somersaults in the streets. But it's about building it the right way. And look at the guys he learned from. Matt Rule, Greg Schiano, and Kirby Smart. It's really tough where Rule and Schiano both made it to the NFL. Schiano made Rutgers for a while a winner. Matt Rule made Temple a winner. He found a way to save Baylor. Now he's at Nebraska. And then you look at Kirby Smart. Right now, he's the best coach in college football. So I think all that experience and having his hands in multiple spots really makes him a well-rounded candidate and a guy that Syracuse needs right now.